Um, in case you don't know me, I'm Tim DeNoble and I'm your dean. Still. I want to get us kicked off, but I want to give the most time I can to the representatives of the design team that are here today, and give you, they've got it structured to give you plenty of time to ask questions. I'll tell you, I'm very excited about where we are, but let me do a few things first. So again, thank you for being here, and I want to make clear that we know there are a lot of people that are in class right now. So what we have done is, this is being recorded. This will be online. I'm not quite sure how long that takes, but I think it can be turned around pretty quickly, so that those who are unable to attend today will be able to see the presentation. And additionally, a packet of materials will be put onto the MindMixer site, so you'll be able to access and look at those after this. So again, we're trying to be sure that as much of our community sees the progress that's being made. So the first thing I want to do is read a statement that is a statement agreed upon by the administration at Anderson Hall and your dean, because I know there have been some concerns as people see the state of Kansas budget, with good reason. So here's the statement. As you are aware, funding for the College of Architecture, Planning and Design targeted enhancement was not included in the governor's budget recommendations for FY16 and 17, although it remains the university's top priority forwarded by the Board of Regents to the Capitol. After meeting with the President, we are agreed on the need to continue to push forward on the planning for the Seton Hall project in anticipation of beginning construction as soon as possible, meaning that you'll see the schedule, meaning we're still planning on vacating Seton after commencement. This is the best scenario in meeting the expectations for those who have already invested in or are considering investment in the project, as well as those served by it. We will continue to advocate with industry leaders and others who have supported us for many years on this project. We continue to monitor the budget deliberations in Topeka and are working with legislators who have supported us and the work you have all done to make this college one of the nation's most highly ranked in our field. So, what's that mean? And what was I not allowed to put down? Governor wants to fund our project. He's made that clear. He wants to basically wants to keep his finger on the pulse about first quarter earnings and that sort of thing. Irregardless, the President says this has been his top priority. He's made it clear to my alumni that he was going to advocate at the state level, and accordingly we are going to continue on the project. So that's exciting, all right? Because if we weren't, it'd be really scary. A couple of things I want to tell you about that and some of the salient points that help us. The state has already invested $2.5 million into the project. Our alumni and friends have already committed over $6 million, about $6.25 million to the project, with about another $1 million in proposals that are outstanding right now. Okay. We had originally committed to raise $10 million towards the project, so we're well on our way. Okay? We are seeking bonding authority, whether it's a 25-year bond or 30-year bond. I don't know, that'll be after my deanship. That'll be somebody else's problem. But we're going to get you in a new building. All right? We have spent and or committed well over $5 million to this project from state funds, and well over $250,000 from private funds in getting this far. Those are things that I point to when I meet with the governor next Wednesday, because I think it's very important that he sees that we've been priming the pump already, and to not go forward on this project again, a project that represents what he has called for, excellence in education, you know, a project that's commensurate with our national standing. So we're moving forward, and I'm very excited today to tell you about a couple other things. A couple weeks ago, we had a hearing to push forward on a CM construction management arrangement for our building. All you pro practice folks know what that means, so I won't go into that. But what it means is that we're going to bring in on the team as soon as possible those that would build the project. That's the shorthand of that. I think that's fantastic modeling for y'all. You know that I preach collaboration. You know that I talk about how important design and construction is. By the way, building design and construction is the third largest sector in the state of Kansas, economic sector. Heavy construction is a little ahead of that, and agriculture obviously ahead of that. Okay? That's a big sector, and I use those numbers a lot with the president. But most importantly, I think it's a great modeling for us because we have Archie Construction Science on the other side of the building. I want to continue to build our ties with those wonderful programs. I want to model for you the behavior, how important it is to have design and construction. I think it accords with the idea that we are not just a design school, but we are a design, think, and make college. So that's very important. So I'm excited that the state agreed to that. We have 4 very highly, I would hold up 4, but then I would drop this. So I might reminded of Inglorious Bastards. 4. Sorry for the obscure reference, but those of you who like Quentin Tarantino or whatever. So we have 4 great construction firms that are going after the project, and we are very excited about this. So I want to remind you that we have finished schematic design. I think that'll be talked about. We are now in design development. I remind you that and you will be reminded that you have any number of ways to continue to provide input, and there has been a lot of input funneled through our various avenues, and frankly, I think you'll see that the design team has done a great job of incorporating that. I'm very excited about the project. I just came from a conference in San Diego where there were probably 70 design professionals and other deans and that sort of thing, and frankly, our project is a buzz nationally, and that's exciting to me. So not only the quality of our programs nationally prominent, but now the design that will house us is already nationally prominent, and that's where we want to be. So I'm going to turn it over to Tomas Rissant. Is that right, Tomas?
Yep.
Who is with ENIAD Architects. By the way, you do realize that we have ENIAD, BNIM, Eldorado, and Confluence on our team, and all are award-winning firms. But this is a really kind of cool time for our college too. I just want to point out that ENIAD, in its previous name that I understood, was an AIA national firm.
Wait a minute, what does Confluence mean?
always thought it had to do with rivers. But INEAD was a AIA National Firm of the Year. BNIM, National Firm of the Year. And we have this guy, Stephen Ehrlich, who's the Victor Rainier Chair, whose firm just was named National Firm of the Year. How many colleges across the nation can say they have 3 AIA National Firms of the Year involved in their college, let alone all the other accolades the team has? So I turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Why don't we first just make some introductions? I've been introduced. We go around, and then we'll all hand it off to each other and get you updated on the project.
So I'm Casey Cassius with BNIM. I was here on this stage, I guess, maybe 3 months ago. Tim, maybe not, 2 months ago, talking about the process. As Tim noted, we are in the DD phase now. We'll complete DD early March. It's a really, really rapid pace to stay on schedule, so I just want to remind everybody of that. And Tomas will get into more detail on that.
I'm Greg Smith, K-State grad in '02 and with INEAD Architects. Been working with Tomas for 10 years now, so.
K-State grad.
I'm going to hand the mic to a Jayhawk, though.
Ouch. I'm Joe Keel with BNIM, project manager. I am a Jayhawk, but I continue to be blown away by what I see at AP Design and at K-State. Very excited to be a part of the project.
I'm Chris Klein. I'm a landscape architect with Confluence, and our job on this project is the landscape architecture around the building, but also this project's more than a building. It's about a place and how this entire place fits into the context of campus today and in the future. So, very challenging project and very excited to be a part of this team. I'm a 92 grad from K-State, so I bleed purple and just honored to be here.
Doug Stockman, with principal with El Dorado Architects and graduate of K-State in '93, and just really happy to be part of this team, which has been an incredible collaborative effort from day one and continues to be on a day-to-day basis. So I really appreciate being a part of this team and being able to come back and serve the college.
Hi, my name is Yu Inamoto, project architect with INEAD Architects. I'm really glad to be on the project. Like Casey said, it's been a pretty intense process. I feel like I'm back in school.
That doesn't look good. That's 7 guys. But I want you to know, actually, that that's just happenstance. The team is very diverse. There are a lot of women, and there are a lot of voices on this project. They just all couldn't be here today. I want to start with just 2 really quick anecdotes. I'm an architect. Those of you who are not architects might not know, but I'm hoping you know who Renzo Piano is. He's probably one of the best architects practicing today. And I have it from a friend who actually talked to him that he said, when I hire Americans now, I want to hire from the middle of the country. Now, it would have been nice he said, I want to hire K-State grads. But think about what he said, and I hadn't told this yet to Tim. This is an actual statement from Renzo Piano. It's really indicative of what's going on in the center of the country, and I think the K-State program is exemplar of this. There's a new take on education happening here, and those fancy schools on the East haven't really picked up on it yet. I'm on my 7th, Greg, I think 7th intern on the East Coast from your school. That's a lot for an East Coast firm. That's because they're outperforming people that I'm hiring from other universities. So there's an amazing thing happening here, and I want you to take stock of that. And if we think about the building and we think about the hardship that you're going to have to go through, I want you to think about the payoff, and I'll come back to that. The second anecdote is about a nightmare that I'm living through right now, or a nightmare that I'm causing. I just bought a house, and I make buildings on average that cost $200 million and are made out of steel and concrete. I don't know anything about 150-year-old houses. So what did I do? I hired an architect. She is really unhappy right now working for an architect. So as we got this commission, I said to my partners, like, this is going to kill us. How can you work as a designer for designers? It's going to be a nightmare. So I just want to say right off the bat that this has been such a pleasant experience. Tim, your chairs, the faculty, the students, and as Doug said, the kind of real practicing without ego, open collaboration has really made this process a joy. So I no longer am scared of working for designers. So we talked about the team. I do want to say something about my 3 other design firm team leaders and maybe give some advice to students. In my firm, in all of our firms, we practice open design inquiry. What that means is the intern, if her idea is best, her idea is going to go in the job. And the reason why BNIM, Confluence, and ELDO, and ENIAD get along so well is that's the foundation of our design practices. That goes all the way to the top. We push on each other, we pull on each other, we even fight, but actually it's the spirit of finding design excellence that drives us all, and that is really informing this project. So to students, my little advice is don't go to a firm, no matter how fancy and important they are as a design lead firm, where your voice is not going to be taken seriously. Go to the firms that practice open design inquiry, and there are a lot more out there, and there more and more are coming along. This is a boring slide, but it's a really important slide, and this is an emotional slide. I want to explain it to you. Nothing's really changed, okay? We have to move out in the middle of 2015. We have to build the building. You get to move in the beginning of 2017. Let me put it in context for you. You have to move out to do and deliver all the lofty goals that we're about to talk about. And I can go through them right now, but you'll talk about them later. I want to really bottom line it for you. Hardship, 2 years, take over the world. I'm not joking. Let me put it another way. This program is so advanced and is delivering such high quality education, and the faculty research and the faculty pedagogy and the curriculum are so cutting edge, and the fact that you represent more design disciplines than most graduate schools, and there's more communication between design disciplines, is making you guys ready to take over the world. And to bottom line it is, you work in a dump right now. And if this place could be optimized to deliver even greater pedagogy, just think of the future. K-State is really, really going to make a play for national dominance in design education. And so as you think, what do I do about my leases? Why do I have to move out? That environment's not going to be good for 2 years. Think of the upside. World domination. Very, very briefly, I want to go quickly because we really want to get to your questions and see if we can answer them. Just to remind you, it's a 2-phase project. We're basically going to demolish Seton Court, make room for a new building, renovate Seton West, renovate Mechanics Hall, move you back in, and then do phase 2 in Seton Central. If you talk to Tim, believe me, he has a phase 3, phase 4, because he's also thinking about at least K-State domination. So that's coming along. As I said, we have to demolish Seton Court. That's an emotional issue too. I think the courtyard is a very, very beautiful place. And we're very mindful that that has emotional value that we have to somehow recreate and connect with. But you'll be seeing other things that are happening out there. You'll be seeing, particularly once the CM comes on, test pits. There'll be people digging out your window to try to figure out what's underground. There's going to start to be an advancement of energy here and inconvenience. So again, remember, world domination. That's what you get if you put up with the inconvenience. These are just some of the goals, and they're really important to us. I'm going to go through them quickly. They should be really important to you, and I hope they resonate with you. First of all, we want to make a building that's open, meaning you can get into from every side. Its interior, porous, so the idea, so people can flow freely between different spaces and really have an exchange, an intellectual exchange. And didactic. By didactic, I mean the formal learning that goes on here is fantastic, but the best institutions, through their design environments, actually teach you informally. And I want it to be that when you walk from the south to the north, down a long corridor in the new building, you're seeing and learning in ways that you could not have imagined or in ways that you're not getting in the classroom. And we think we have a building that's going to do that. As I talked about Seton Court, we have to remember it, and we have to give you great outdoor spaces and outdoor spaces that belong only to you. Weigel right now is too far away. We want to make it front and center. The landscape at K-State for me, I hope I'm not going to insult anybody here, is pretty boring. And the landscape at K-State doesn't yet really showcase the progressive attitude of contemporary landscape design. So we want people to walk by I-70 and realize, wow, landscape design is a really interesting discipline, and see landscapes that look different than the typical K-State landscape. Faculty in the mix, I find your faculty is somewhat hidden. There are many faculty members, students, you know that they'd like to stay hidden. We don't want them to hide. We want them to, when they want to get away from you, because you can be annoying to them sometimes, we want them to be able to get away from you, but we really believe that academic communities have to be built upon informal collisions and informal exchange between faculty and students at all times. Transparent studios, can't see in them right now, got to see in them. Your fabrication program is probably at the heart of why you guys are being so well educated. All the design disciplines, if you think about the revolution of 3D printers and those things, all design disciplines are going from abstractly delineating what a design is and handing it to a third party to saying, I am, as designer, am maker. And that's why you're prepared to work in my office when you graduate, and in other offices, interior architecture offices, landscape design offices, et cetera. A social heart, there's no social living room right now. I don't think Pierce Commons functions that way. A community has to have a living room so that they can see and be seen by others. We want to deliver that. Bigger and more visible gallery, departments on the main drag. Your department chairs are not immediately accessible to you. Harmony and dissonance means, you know, we want everybody to get along, but we want a little disruption. We want a little kind of intellectual poking at each other, because that's how I think culture moves forward and new ideas are born. And certainly, if we're keeping, you know, two major parts of the existing facility, Mechanics Hall and Seton West, we need to renovate them in a way so that people in one part of the building don't feel, oh, those people are in the cool part. How come I don't get to be in the cool part? We don't want to have haves and have-nots. So for those of you who study sustainability, you probably know that the most sustainable form of a building is probably a 50-foot wide bar, and a 50-foot wide bar with its long facades facing north and south. We're proposing a bar that's facing, that's running the opposite direction, and we had our hands tied behind our back. There is no place to put this building other than to make a long bar that's facing north and south, putting your facades on the east and west exposures, which is much harder to control. So we're working on that. But you can see this is really the only real place that we can build. This is not going away. This is a beautiful, historic, and the first building. And this is the only place we have an opportunity to grow your program by 50%. And the way, in concept design, these are images from concept design. As a designer, what you really want out of concept design, what you hope for, even though you design the exterior of the building and you make sexy images, you hope that the general organization and distribution of program lives on once you start the project again, or once you get fired and another architect or another designer takes over. And I'm very pleased with our team's work in concept design in that the rudimentary partie of the building has survived, which means that it was a compelling idea. And that rudimentary idea is essentially to extend in one studio bar a new studio block with faculty offices, make what we've been calling a jewel, a highly transparent volume that connects the new building to Mechanics Hall, and in some shape or form, whether it's green or whether it's an interior space, recalls the square shape of Seton Court in pretty close to the exact same location. And that's how we're kind of connecting with history. What we're also doing, because we have to pack this with program, is we're compelled to depress the landscape down into the ground so that we could get sunlight into the lower levels. And that became a design challenge, which you'll see Confluence has brilliantly responded to. And this is really the location for a progressive landscape attitude, but also a place for a landscape that belongs to you. And trust me, it'll be very, very cool, as you'll see in a little bit. And the way the whole thing comes together from concept design, studios along the bar, along corridor, the Jewel, historic Mechanics Hall, and everything on I-70, a new entry, straight from the Student Union. You can see it even from the intake to the parking garage. A new front door, a clear front door, a front door that doesn't say engineering above it. And our goal is to, we're not going to change the facade of Seton West that much, but certainly in the new studio, one of the things we want this building to do in this design century, and I think this is the most important design century in the history of humankind, one of the things we want it to do, and you can do it on a university, is this building has to convince not you guys, but the rest of the academic community that design matters. And the way to do that is as the world is walking along here, is to have transparency and expose the vitality and the energy and the vibrancy and the stuff that you make to K-State. And what we're hoping happens a lot is the history majors, the economic majors, other graduate students in the hard sciences, what they're going to do is say, you know what? The coolest walk through campus is to just walk through this building. And once we do that, when they become CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and things like that, suddenly they'll say, wait a minute, design matters. I'm going to hire a designer. And I hope that this building changes the relationship of this college to the rest of the university. Other thing that lasted from concept design, and I think this is very, very potent, it's a very simple, dumb idea, but one that makes a lot of sense to us, is this vertical stratification of these three elements: faculty, students, and the zone for mixing. And the concept is just as simple as this. Let's group the faculty together so that they can have intellectual exchange, they can collaborate across disciplines, and they also can get away from the students when they want to, because they do have to do their primary research and scholarship. But front them on a space that is for social engagement and for intellectual exchange in the crit spaces. And that, in turn, is fronted on a studio bar. So students, interaction and exchange, faculty sitting on top of where we all go to be makers. And that's the simple diagram of the building that continues to inform what we're doing today. Some views, concept design, you've seen these, but again, this notion of the sunken court looking back to the Union. And this notion, we call it now the collaboration corridor. I'm usually scared of 450-foot long corridors because those can be very deadly spaces as a designer. But I think we've worked very hard here to make this walk from the front door that faces the Student Union all the way towards the north, towards the library, this walk of engagement where as you're walking down the corridor, at all these episodic moments, you're constantly being engaged with new content, new information, whether it's faculty research on one side, student projects on the next, social spaces. We think it's going to be a very, very exciting walk, and that's called the collaboration corridor, as I said, the view from the outside. So where we are today, I just want to remind you, we are trying to double the student population from about 600 to 900. That was our goal. Where we're really headed to in terms of the facility is getting to approximately 812 seats. No hot desks for ENVD folks. Everyone's going to have their own home. But this is tremendous growth. I mean, you can imagine like a building proclaiming we're going to grow as an institution by 50%. It's really ambitious, but I said, remember, what are we doing? We're taking over the world here. We need more of you. We need more designers that are trained at this level of excellence. We started to look at the relationship down the collaboration corridor. This is actually just a couple of bays in the newer portion of the building. You can see the dimensions. This is what we're calling the collaboration corridor. This is what you walk down. But the thesis is that there are going to be many ways to walk through these environments. So this vertical axis that goes north to south, runs through the whole building, is then punctuated by an east-west axis that sponsors the entries to studios. You'll see later we're actually going to have a universal studio, meaning we're going to have big open studios that can be subdividable. But what we're trying to get to now, what we've done with the steering committee, is saying, let us start with an environment of completely open studios once you cross the line. Give every studio a threshold. Give every studio a place for their own identity with pinup spaces all around it. And actually, we're looking at pinup spaces even on this wall right now. Communal work areas that divide it. Here is the crit social zone, so a series of rooms for crit spaces, for classrooms. They can be used as galleries, and also punctuated by voids. It's a very wide floor plate. We want to get natural light down as far as we can into the building. Continuing across the cross-axis, ending up in the faculty enclave with little spaces that we're now, it's written here sometimes pod, we're actually calling them porches. These are porches that nobody owns. These are porches that we are not going to program. These are places for informal things to happen. So faculty, faculty, faculty with a little entry. So collegiality is right here. Everybody has their own front door. This is their little porch. Then a kind of social, psychological play of who's going to occupy this space. It's going to look over another double height space, and this space on the lower floor is actually that big, you'll see later. And I think that academic communities thrive when there's lots of unprogrammed space. That's a luxury because building space costs money, but to have unprogrammed space is where you have that informal exchange. So will students feel comfortable about coming over here? Maybe. Will these 4 faculty kind of say to everybody, hey, this is our workroom, don't go in there? Maybe. But let's see that play out, and let's see what happens. I think it's going to be very interesting. So this is the general kind of diagram of the building. As you can see, what we're trying to do is say there are many modes of moving through. You can take the highway, and I'm hoping that on this wall, faculty research or faculty design work or faculty polemical issues are posted. And on these other walls, on the other side, on the crit side, student work is. And so as you walk down here, there's a constant pinging from side to side. What is the faculty doing? What are the students doing? You'll be passing crits. But you can take the highway quickly. You can go into a porch, right? You can meet somebody. You can take the cross grain into the studio. You can also walk along, as I said, you'll see it in the next ones where we're even having bigger studios. You actually walk along on the studio interior. And one of the things I think is happening today that is not so successful is studio to studio. Students aren't seeing other students' work outside of the studio enough. And I think, again, that's a really important part to informal design education is to see what others are doing. Some more looks, and we'll come back to this, but these things can be configured in different ways. Even the kind of thresholds to the studios can be configured in different ways, and you'll see we're looking at many different ways to do that. But one thing that has stayed is this notion that you kind of cross into the studio environment over a bridge. You'll see now that they've become one-sided. I'll show that to you in a second. But we want there to be some decorum, some pause to the crossing of the threshold into the studio. Just a kind of slight psychological readjustment as you come in. Maybe students, maybe we want the faculty to feel like, okay, got to pause, I'm about to come into the studio. Because that's your domain too. That's where you live, and it's your space, and there should be a real threshold to it. So this notion of this open studio, we're going to go to universal desks. That means one desk type for the entire college. So no more moving things around a lot. This is an early image, but the thing that still remain is this notion of walking along the back side of the crit rooms, having things that you need like lockers or plotters or storage, having informal pinup spaces all around, having these higher work tables that delineate one studio from another, but one studio and another. They're connected. We are going to look into ways that faculty can very simply, if they don't want that openness, move things, movable partitions that are connected to the actual structure that can help you close this down when you want it. Not fully close it down, but make more barriers. And we like that idea of flexibility. It can be open. Maybe you're teaching a collaborative studio, 2 or 3 studios are teaching together, or it can be thwarted down. Here's the threshold diagram. Remember, today what we're really trying to show you is how the building works, not what it looks like. I think next time we come, we can really have a debate about the character of the interior architecture and the character of the exterior architecture and the character of the landscape and so forth and the fabrication labs. But this is just an idea, of this threshold condition right here, studio entry, this ability to look into the crit spaces, right, that's going on. The double height spaces to see your friends down there and to bring natural light down to the lower floors in this very wide floor plate. Walls to be either curated or informally pinned up on, probably student work, facing, you can't see it in this, the faculty walls. The sections, so here's the collaboration corridor, right? The notion that the faculty will be over here, crit spaces over there, and then the studios. And very, very important, because fabrication is so foundational to your education in the right way, because it's about to be foundational in professional practice on all disciplines, is the notion that when the public comes in, when others come in, that you're going to see what's going on in the fabrication labs. We really want what's going on in the fabrication labs to be disseminated visually, both to you as a community and to anyone else who comes in the building. And I'm going to ask Doug to come up. And you need a mic? Yeah. And do the Fab Labs.
So I have a quick question to the students and maybe a quick show of hands. Faculty not allowed to engage. So of those of you who are here, how many are currently in a design make or design fabrication studio? And how many of you are interested at some point in your academic career?
So you're after him.
Okay. So, students are not allowed to answer this question. Everyone else is. Who here knows where the model making lab is? Wow. Worse than I thought. Architecture students are not allowed to answer this question. Who here knows where the metal lab is? That's better. Everyone else, LA students are not allowed to answer this question. Who here knows where the fluvial lab is? That's what I thought. Okay. That worked perfectly. One of our main charges here, from you to us, the design team, was to elevate the pedagogy of the college, and specifically within the fabrication labs, improve the facilities and create an environment where it becomes not only a cross-disciplinary environment, but one that is both physically contiguous for the physical aspects of the labs, but also for the teaching of what happens within those facilities. So where we are in the process is taking what you currently have as a very fragmented plan of fabrication labs that are really scattered all over the building at various levels, and pulling them all together and really attempting to create this contiguous space that can really house all the various labs, and those which require separation, be it for acoustic reasons or dust collection reasons, that those all play into how we have arrived at the layout that we have shown before you right now. And just real quickly, all this level simply complements everything and all the efforts that are happening on the upper levels with respect to the collaboration corridor that where's the red part? The B. Oh, with respect to the collaboration corridor that moves down the center spine and connects the students from Old Seton to the library or vice versa. And Tomas talked earlier about the crossroads and the Fab Labs being that point. And you can see here the crossroads really making that kind of elbow connection between the two spaces. So walking through some of the spaces that are finding themselves in this lower level, we first begin with a specific location for the 3D print lab that is found at the turning point of the corridor. The Center for Design Excellence, which is intended to be a completely open and contiguous space that will house a variety of functions and events throughout the course of the year. The fabrication lab offices have specifically intentionally placed in a centralized location to give the faculty and the instructors a clear view of all the labs that surround their offices. This is both from an instructional point of view, but also from a safety point of view, so that they can monitor your actions. I believe everybody wants to leave here with all their digits and appendages, and that's really important to the university as well. We have a specific location for the smaller CNC machines, and next to that is the model making lab, and then next to that is an open flex space that can be used for work that can spill out from the rest of the fabrication labs, but also could be used for crit space, for assembly, for mock-ups. And then adjacent to that is the metal lab, which extends this entire length of the southern portion right here. The main space, which is actually a double height space, which Tomas alluded to earlier about this initial view down into the fab labs, houses the main woodworking equipment, including the main CNC, and then off to the north is the fine woodworking, which most of you probably know right now as the IA wood shop. And then connected to the north courtyard is the glue clamping and spray booth area. So, as you all know, and those of you who have experienced the environs of the Fab Labs, there are time periods in which influence when students can interact with those specific spaces. So this has been formed the layout to a degree. There will be certain parts of the lab that will be operational during the course of the day, which you can access through your various classes. There will be parts of the lab that are actually extended to later hours, which will be monitored by, I believe, students. And then finally, in the Center for Design Excellence is a 24-hour access lab. Collaboration corridor. Similar to upstairs, we wanted to set up these cross-grain moments where within the corridor there could be moments of respite, but also views into specific parts of the lab. At this point, into the metal lab where the welding would occur. Into the Center for Design Excellence at 2 locations, and then mainly, and a key part of this is to give you now something you've never had before, which is the ability to offload materials and or create mock-ups that have direct access through the labs, through the corridor, and into the Center for Design Excellence, which would then have a direct view to the courtyard as you enter the building. This is not just for the students. We also envision this being for passers-by that would be along the I-70 corridor, or potentially interested students from other colleges that would venture down and take a little peek into what we do. And this is just a quick axonometric of the attempts at creating not just transparency through here and not just access, but really trying to establish a spatial experience that you would have going down the corridor and then in each of the labs. And then is the connection to the courtyard there. So this doesn't come without some pretty granular investigation and taking everything that you have currently and trying to find a home for it, making sure that the flow of materials coming in, the breakdown of those materials, and then the specific work that goes into what you have as part of your semester. All this has carefully been thought through, at least in one iteration that will start you off what you should know is that all of this is being set up so that any of this can be moved around. So you might find in a year or two, 2 or 3 years from now, that you can plug in or pull things out and move them accordingly. You will also notice here that the Center for Design Excellence does not have anything, and that is also intentional. This gives you a little clue as to the intensity of equipment that is going to be filtered throughout the entire Fab Labs, and then the clean open space that can occur here. Ventilation. You have, again, a fragmented ventilation system. The lab will now include a centralized dust collection system as well as a vent system for both spray booths and for welding. And all of this will be zoned and brought out to a kind of corral out here at the north end. The faculty and the instructors, we're obviously improving their situation to give them full view of the labs and also keep student work as close to them as possible and safe from damage as the work progresses. And then one moment that we keep coming back to, if you can envision this particular zone right here is the 2-story space. There'll be people upstairs on the first floor looking down into the Fab Labs, and we see this back wall as a real opportunity to start to rethink how you store not just raw materials, but also start to put on display your work that may be in progress. So there'll be a versatile storage rack system that can really combine both activities in one. Specifically in the metal labs, we keep seeing the scale of the work increase, which means that the materials become heavier and harder to move. We are trying to employ systems like gantries that bring in material from the entry all the way back to the plasma cutter and then storage racks along the way. Areas of the welding would be secured with weld curtains, and then specifically within the welding area, vent hoods and or arms that come down that need to be directly where you are welding. Center for Design Excellence. This has been envisioned by the steering committee and faculty as a place where it can be used for a variety of things. Throughout the course of the year, it might be a place to actually do assembly, mock-ups, experimentation, fuselage design, and finally, final crit space, and potentially even event space that could extend from beyond the commons and the courtyard.
Is everybody still awake? I'm going to quickly go through the overall layout. Sorry. So this is level 1. One thing we realized with all the cool stuff that Doug is talking about, where the Fab Labs happen at the lower level, is what we call the bar. Is the extension of the collaboration corridor from Seton East. I'll go back into the details of the haves and have-nots, but it's been really important to us for this to be a fluid experience, to feel that there's nothing happening in the new building that hasn't been thought of and integrated into the renovation of the old. As Tomas talked about, the jewel, the glass piece, it's not an Apple store, but it is going to be cool, it is going to be transparent, and you are going to be able to look to the south and see the Konza Prairie. So we think that's cool. The headpiece is another way that we'll refer to it. But Mechanics Hall, the oldest educational building on campus, I believe, the second oldest in the state of Kansas. This is where your dean's going to live. This is where students' services will live. This is where you'll go see your advisor. But also, this is where you'll go to your new 300-seat auditorium. No more Seton 63. You guys own this first. So is Maxine here?
Yes.
Everybody say hi to Maxine. She is going to be your new best friend in 2017. Let me tell you why. As you move through the sunken court and enter at the lower level, you'll have what we call the information commons. This is an extension of the landscape coming into the building, but it's also an extension of the library coming out. This is a convertible wall on the north face of that, and that transparency that's important to us is an AP designed courtyard. Maxine's going to allow you to take your books out into this space. She's going to allow you to have your large group studies down here. And it's one of the things that's been important throughout the conversation with you guys is that there's not enough breakout space away from the studio environment. It's important to have the porches, the places to make models, the porches to have breakouts with your instructors. But it's also important because you have other classes outside of studio to have a place to go study, to cram the night before an exam. And that's one of the ways we see the activation of the information commons happening. Your library stacks what was be underneath that north-south new entry to the jewel above. We call this the Cadbury eggs. How many people have been in special collections? 2, 3. This is going to be right at the threshold of your entry into the library. We're providing a table, a room for you to pull books out. It's next to the front desk, so Maxine will be able to police this. But there's a lot of cool stuff happening in there, and it's important to Tim, it's important to the library that you guys can actually see what's happening behind that controlled environment. Again, as we mentioned, the group study, but you're not always in groups. Sometimes you need to go sit by yourself. So the quiet study will happen to the south of the stack area. It'll have a visual connection to the sunken court, but this little door is only an egress door. So your friends can see you, you might be able to see them, but they can't bug you. The natural light being a showcase piece at the lower level. So if we move up, I'm sorry the landscape is not showing up. It will by the end of DD, I promise. So as you have your drop-off on the eastern edge of the student union, imagine being able to look to move up I-70 and into the jewel, into the new front door for AP design. If you're a potential student, if you're going to see your advisor, you would move to the east into Mechanics Hall. Associate Dean, and that will all take place here. But on that north-south running axis, you'll be able to enter into Seaton 63. This is not just a large teaching experience. What we're proposing is that the tiered seating is convertible. It can go back into a stacked position, giving you the opportunity to have large events there. Maybe at the end of the semester, you guys will all, the second year students will all pin up, and that will be your crit room. Maybe the Dean's Advisory Council, when you guys graduate and continue your relationship with AP Design, will happen in there. So there's a lot of good things that will happen in that space. As you move to the west, the gallery overlooking that sunken court on the north, that is AP Designed owned space. The transparency to the south, again, a smaller breakout of that information commons, the visual connection to the lower level, and then moving into that crossroads that we've talked about, the east-west, the north-south, being able to look down into the fabrication labs, but also being able to have that first notion of transparency into the studio. One of the things that we've talked about is you now live in a pancake. It means that you're horizontal, there's no visual connection vertically, and it's one of the more important design drivers in this scheme is to open up not just between disciplines year to year, but to open up to the entire college and faculty experience. So we sometimes refer to them as the chocolate chips, the porches, those kind of sweet morsels where you can have that interaction with your faculty. So moving to the south, the strong cross graining, the larger porches with the two-story volumes on the west face looking down into the fabrication yard. But really, the transparency as well on the east face of the building. The reason that the studios are on this side is to highlight what you guys are doing, so that your friends that know that you're spending 24 hours a day in Seton can now walk by and see you guys in there, see all the cool stuff that's happening. And trust me, they're going to want to go to the Jewel. Moving to the south, that same cross graining, although it's not, it doesn't have the same natural light on the facades, it will from the top, bringing the sawtooth back to life. Your department heads on the main drag, really setting up what we consider 3 entries: the Jewel, the Knuckle, the Link. We believe in the future, as things start to happen with Seton West, that this will be a main artery through campus, and we're predicting or setting up the design so that that can easily be transformed as we move forward. But here are your department heads, your porch out of the studio experience. You guys own this. We don't know who owns that, but the students will be able to spill out of the studio. Maybe you're making models there. Maybe you have informal group teaching there. Maybe you're having your crit spill out. And moving to the south, the 3rd entry that exists today, it's not going away, but really having that reception so that a new user to the building can find their way as they move from Bosco Plaza into the building. So not in contract, but you guys will be pursuing in the future with Tim's help is the AP Design asset-owned space in Seton Central will take on some of the faculty. You'll be renovating that space for classrooms, but that's phase 2. It won't be done in 2017. So moving to the upper level, again, I'll start at the Jewel. You have 2 large transparent spaces on the stacked above the gallery, a convertible wall again, hopefully, that this could be a large classroom. Maybe it's broken down into small conference rooms. Maybe it's broken into small crits. Actually, not that small. Those are good-sized rooms. But one of the cool things that we think is developed in DD is this terrace. We're no longer occupying the roof of the Jewel, although it is important that you have your own AP designed green roof space. That will happen on the bar. But this moment here, being able to walk out, look down onto the sunken court, look towards the prairie to the south, and see your friends as they're using I-70 and entering into the Jewel. The dean's office in Mechanics Hall. And then here you see that convertibility we talked about in the auditorium, the seats coming out, 300 people, and what else? And then the bridge. In the future, you can have your all-school meetings here. The dean will stand right there and speak to you. They might happen out here on really nice days. But we think this is a really cool moment for you guys to move forward, and the footprint is convertible. You guys will find ways to use it, and we hope that some of what in the program is these 400 square foot crit spaces, that will start to happen in these larger, in the auditorium and in the Jewel experience, to really even further showcase in that transparency to the K-State community what all is happening in AP design. So moving across, again, that transparency to the studios, you'll have 2 specialized studios overlooking the Fab Lab, or Fab Yard below. a series, a variety of different size crit spaces, natural light coming down from above, that visual transparency, those chocolate chips we talked about, and then moving into the link, again another crit space overlooking that east-west circulation that we're predicting that's going to happen in the future of campus. And then it continues. The no haves or have-nots. The same experience happens in the old building that happens in the new. We also realize that in not being able to walk up to the edge of the building in Seton East, I forgot to point this out on the first level, you can do this. So one of the things, this will be your space down here. It might be plot, it might be laser, but you will have a lounge breakout space here as well to move away from the studio experience, look out to Bosco Plaza, and wait for your plots to come out at the end of the semester when there's a long queue. So, Tomas.
Thanks. Is this on? Yes, great. So I want to talk about these porches that were a little bit controversial, and in order to pull them off, we had to organize the faculty offices in a very unusual way as well, but we think it's well worth it. Looking around right now, as you walk through your environment, you forget about all of the non-formal, non-class, real teaching moments that happen, but they really do. I mean, people do that and need to do that. People need to, stop and talk and pull off. Smaller groups need to meet. All the things, models need to be stored, your bigger models, or put someplace and gotten out of the studio. This is all happening right now, and we wanted to make places that could accommodate all of this kind of spontaneous activity. So the notion of the porches. So faculty offices, there are faculty offices that are directly on the facade, and there's about, it's under 20%, probably about 10 out of the total of 54, I think, faculty offices that are inboard. As we get towards construction document phase, we're probably going to work with Tim and the steering committee to think about assignments. Some of these walls could be taken down. I'm hoping that like-minded faculty, not are assigned, but elect to say we would love to have a shared office, or perhaps faculty that are interested in similar veins of research or actually working together to research might choose to have this wall go away and have a shared office. But that's the rhythm of outboard office, inboard office. This office will have a window on the facade. This office, right now we're looking, will have a clear story and a clear story and a window here and here that looks out to the west as well. But this configuration allows this very spatially rich moment in the plan and a spatially rich moment in section to happen. This is the cross grain. Right across from this is the entry to the studio. So on the second floor, you could come out, you look down into this space, and all sorts of different things can happen. Some of them can have lounge seating informally. Some of them can have other things, pin-up spaces, exhibits. And we're looking at both the upper space and the lower space right now to have ways that they can be modified very simply. So here is this notion of swinging panels. Maybe behind some of the swinging panels are whiteboards for writing. Maybe on the surface of the swinging panels are tackable surfaces. But you can see how it can make more tackable space for this as an informal pin-up crit zone. Other notions are maybe over here in the threshold doing a similar thing where the partition can move. Maybe you want to make this a little bit more private there. And keep on going, you can see how then the spaces can be used differently. Over here is with two other movable partitions, and here's a swinging one. So as you walk down the collaboration corridor, I'm hoping that there's a kind of staccato rhythm of all these different events happening, people using these spaces in different ways. And it's not, again, it's not program space. So, things will change very dynamically. And crit space uses, all the things we're calling crit space uses, not just those porches, but the crit rooms themselves, we want to have multiple functions. So we want crit spaces to actually be gallery and exhibition spaces. So you can imagine on open house day when prospective students are coming through, maybe they can pull off into what was your crit space just the day before, and there's actually a little mini exhibition going on there. But all different modes of presentation and crit formats, we want these universal rooms to support. And the idea of getting more duty out of these rooms through a vocabulary of these movable walls, very low tech. If you guys know the architect Tom Kundig on the West Coast, he does all these beautiful, very low tech things that move. They won't break, they're easy to change, and they're easy to convert the room back to its original shape and form very quickly. So we're studying different ways to do this, and what we want to do, our objective, is to come up with a single vocabulary of these movable walls that will allow the porches, the crit spaces, and the universal studio spaces to effectively be subdividable and give you even more operational functionality out of these rooms than you would have if we didn't have movable partitions. So taking you through, these are the ones we're studying right now. Maybe we have just a series, and you've seen these in graduate schools here, but everywhere. These are just partitions on wheels. They could be in the studio. Your faculty could say, everybody take one of these, pin up your work. When I call you in, wheel it into the crit room, and you can configure them in different ways. In a larger crit room, you can use them to divide the room into two. But also, in a smaller crit room, you can try to make the crit go more quickly because you have more pin-up space. Another one, and this one seems to have some traction, is the notion of just sliding panels to double the capacity of pinnable surfaces, to have whiteboards behind them. And you can see how these are our crit spaces. They vary in size from 20 seats, 21 seats, but in different configurations, and there are larger ones. So again, faculty and students can configure these rooms in different ways and really change how the rooms work. Yet another one is the notion of on overhead steel rails, a partition that can move north and south and even come off the rail system and then pivot to the wall. In all of our potential design operations, what we really want is at some point, when you come out of the studio and a crit is happening, you'll be able to see through an all-glass wall and participate visually in what's going on there, even if that's not your studio. Because again, that notion of seeing other design responses and other disciplines learning is going to help you be a more effective professional. But the notion then of having these movable partitions when the room is not in use, move to the glass, and actually be a kind of curated show back to your community or back to visitors is a real potential in these dynamic crossroads to have content up there periodically. Yet another one we're looking at, as you saw before, are these pivoting walls, and I'm just very excited that when we come back next time, we'll really have this figured out. And your steering committee is really bringing to us the sentiments of the faculty and the sentiments of the students on how these crit spaces and the porch spaces and the studio spaces really should work. So I think communication is working very well. Greg, do you want to come up for systems or just quickly? We should go quickly because I want to get to, Chris likes to talk for a long time, and I'm just we want to get to their questions and answers.
So this process just isn't about pretty pictures and floor plans and layouts. Our consultant teams are working really hard. As you know, Seton East was not a building built for design education. I don't have the pointer, but on the left-hand side here, you can see the original plan. This large open bays when heavy machinery equipment was coming in and out of this. So over time, this has all been infilled, piecemealed. Some of it is 2x12 framing, some of it is steel framing. This poses a real challenge. We can't increase the load capacity in the building, But in this conversation of the haves and have-nots, we want this studio environment to feel the same, very similar. So all of this is going to stay. We're proposing the same floor finish, moving from old into new, and we're going to work, as you know, and we talk about the pancake experience now. You can't see your friends, but you can hear them. We're going to deal with the acoustics so that your studio does have the privacy that you need.
And just to give you particulars, you know, you would never design this right now, today, if you had a blank sheet of paper, either one of these. So from Seton East to the new building, walk through, you know, where your electrical outlets are, where your data is, ceiling finish, floor finish, you know, the functionality of your spaces will all be the same. And it's been very tricky, but we're going to deliver that. In terms of sustainability, we are pushing for a LEED Gold building. I don't know exactly where sustainability education is here. What's happening in professional practice right now, in particular my firm, is we are all moving away from LEED as the real standard bearer for sustainability. LEED's fallen behind other standards such as Passive House. And our constituency, our design clients, which for my firm is mostly universities, are getting much more savvy, not about saying, can I have, you know, LEED Platinum, but actually understanding that many aspects of LEED Platinum are not necessarily delivering the greatest impact to pushing back on climatic change. So although we're going to go for LEED Gold, we're going to work hard to do things that LEED might not recognize as beneficial right now. LEED's working on changing. But different ways to reuse heat gain, different ways to increase daylighting, and so we're looking forward to showing you some more of that when we come back next time. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can do the. So one of the other things we're working with Henderson Engineer on, and it's important in the conversation with Confluence as well, is that this building isn't just a house for your education, it's an educational tool for you. So what we're looking into is the DDC controls, how you on your phone can be a smart user of your building, to know when natural light is maximized, that you're turning off the lights. We're going to pair you against other studios. I don't know what the prize is going to be yet, but maybe you get to control the exterior lights for a day, make the LEDs a different color. But it's really understanding your footprint in the building. And so it's one of the things we're excited about. We saw a plug-in for Revit yesterday that turned our Revit model into a video game. So we're hoping that that same brain power and trust is going into the creation of an app that makes you, puts you in a real life video game that has information coming back to you.
All right, I'm going to burn through this because I want Chris to get up here, and also I know that at this point in the design, I want the building to work. I think there's not enough emphasis that, you know, getting spaces and environments to work to support institutional cultures is really hard. It's more important than making the building look cool. We will make a building that looks cool. But I'll take you through this and just get straight to kind of the general disposition of the building. These are old. We have not updated them yet. When we come back next time, we will. But very quickly, you know, Seton East, we're going to reopen the light monitors. So the collaboration corridor, north to south, will have natural light coming down it. On our east and west facades will be more highly glazed than our north and south. I told you that's actually not the right thing to do, but we're stuck here given the rest of the campus architecture they have to fit to. Here is the jewel. Here is the sunken courtyard. And here, what Greg was talking about is a penthouse, and this is your green roof. This is a roof that you guys will be able to come up to and not recreate on, but relax on, as well as engage landscape architecture. Students and faculty can engage in experimentation on this green roof. You can see it from the other side now. So this is the faculty side. This is two studios up there, and there's the fabrication lab. And the notion is, again, you come through this space. This is the main cross-axis of the building, which connects the administrative head to the social heart, to the studio bar, to the collaboration corridor, to the zone of the faculty, all on top of the fabrication labs. The approach, and this would be a good time to hand it back to Chris because this is what he's working on most. But this is, as you know, this is I-70, Mechanics Hall, finally your own front door. This is a straight shot past to the garage and the drop-off. The sunken courtyard will appear, fabrication labs, students and studios, the social heart of the building, the dean.
So I know this says site, and I know we've talked at length about the building. And in a lot of ways, it's easier to just draw those lines about where the edge of the building is and focus on all those internal spaces and how they're all arranged. And it's easy for us as landscape architects to just think everything outside the building is our domain, and we should focus on that and make it all it should be. But this project is much more than a building. It's much more than a site. I think our role as a designer on this project and the role of all of us as designers on this project are to make this a place. It's about placemaking. And that edge of the building is, in my mind anyway, and in the minds of the rest of the design team, it's a very blurry line. As clear as they show up on the plans, and you see some with glazing is a really thin line and a really thick line for masonry, that's a very blurry line between outside and inside. And there are some very, very strong relationships that our entire team is taking into account in the design of these spaces, where they're placed within the building and how they relate to what's going on outside. And so our role as landscape architects on this project doesn't just start at the edge of the building. There's lots of conversations about what happens at the knuckle and how students are going to interact coming in and out of the building, and where they go on the site, where they go on the campus, what happens at the entry to the Jewel, the North Courtyard. There's lots of moments where people can come in and out of the building, but the place that we feel is really going to become the living room is this sunken courtyard. And I don't like the term sunken courtyard, but I know that's what's been used in the past. I'd like to think of it as the living room. And I'd almost like to think of that verticality, the entry into the building, which is up, one level up. It's kind of like the loft, looking down on the living room. This place, this living room, is a part of the building. It's a part of what's happening inside the building. And it's a part of what we're all going to experience and call home. When I come back to this campus after 20 years, it still feels like home to me. And I want this place to feel like home to you. I want this entire campus to feel like home to you when you come back. And my hope for all of you is someday to be able to be up here and to be involved in making a difference on this campus. I'm incredibly fortunate, as well as our other alumni on the team, to be part of something like this. And we're giving it our all to try to incorporate all the comments that we've received throughout this entire process. Faculty has been fantastic to work with. The students have been engaged so far. There's been lots of input, and we've taken all that into account. We want to continue to hear your input throughout this entire process. The design of this living room, this space, is really important in this place. Along I-70, as an arrival moment, not only for students of this college, but students throughout the entire campus, to really understand what design is all about. And so some really important relationships. This arrival moment coming into the Jewel, we really want that to be front and center, the focus as you're walking up I-70 from the south, to know that that's the front door, but also to be drawn in to what's happening down below in the living room. And I mentioned student input. Bicycle parking has been a huge issue. We've had lots of conversation about it. As a team, we've heard lots of input on Facebook and MindMixer thus far. I'm sure we're going to continue to hear input on that. We are taking those things into account, and doing what we can to try to address those. But there will be additional bike parking as a part of this project, and we're looking at strategic locations that are safe, that are close to entries, that are visible, places to do that. There are currently a number of spaces down here on I-70, and this is a no bike riding zone, although I don't think it's enforced strictly. But the idea is to encourage bicycle parking here and then to walk in and experience these spaces. So we're looking at potentially expanding bike parking there, trying to expand bike parking up there on the northwest corner of the building, up by the power plant, and back in the alleyway where it's totally visible. So we're taking into account how people are coming into this building in a variety of ways. The design of the living room, really want to focus on that in the short time we have today. We're trying to make that a place that students feel really comfortable coming in and out of the building easily and using a variety of spaces. The design of this entire space needs to function well for a huge crowd, an all-college event, so that when you have a speaker that's down in the lower part of the living room facing up, it needs to function somewhat as an amphitheater. And you know, the old way they did amphitheaters was just stairs, just like this. And it's a lot more challenging to do amphitheaters nowadays because you've got ADA, you have to provide access at all levels. We're integrating that in here and making this fully accessible, but doing it in a way that's also functional and usable in a variety of different ways. So lots of seating moments and a space that's functional not only for a large event and functions well for that, but also a space where it's comfortable for a group of 5 or a group of 25 or a class of 50, a class of 100. Very flexible spaces so that there's lots of places within this living room that feel comfortable for a variety of groups or one large, huge gathering. We take into account sun-shade analysis. We've got some videos of this that I'm not going to show you right now, but we take into account where sunlight's coming. I mentioned the north-south bar and the challenges that creates within the building. It also creates challenges with the site. It also makes opportunities for seating along the edge of the building here in the afternoon very attractive, because on a hot summer day you will have some shade there. So we're looking at taking into account where we place seating within the courtyard. All of those things matter. These are some early renditions of what this space is starting to shape up to be. You can see a series of terraces leading down, and you may recall from the original concept design, there were a series of east-west benches, if you will, in between these ramps, this series of ramps. What we're looking at doing is changing that and turning it more into an L at the south part at the lower part of the living room, and also at the upper part of the living room. So that reinforces the connectivity between the knuckle and students coming out and down this ramp, down the stairs and into the information commons. This is the Center for Design Excellence, the 24-hour space that Doug was talking about. That last ramp comes down along that space and allows a bench that's facing both ways, so that if someone's walking along I-70 and sees a beehive of activity late at night, and we all know this building really becomes your home, you spend a lot of time here. Can't count how many all-nighters I put in Seton, and it draws other students in. They want to see what's happening there, and so we're trying to make it very conducive for people to be drawn down into using that space. So here's a view looking at the Jewel approaching on the top, with another seating area, a small plaza space here that's more shaded with trees. that really frames that space. But we're also trying to get a visual down to the lower part of the courtyard. The success of sunken courtyards is very limited out in the design world, and there are things that we need to do to activate that space and make it very conducive for people to feel comfortable going down into a space like that. So I think we're accomplishing that by minimizing the railing, minimizing that feeling of separation, and maximizing the view down to that space and making it an attractive environment. We're looking at placing something down here like a fire pit or a fountain or some type of feature down here that could extend the use of that space. Seating moments in a lot of different ways, as well as some landscape here that starts to slope down towards the jewel so it makes it more visible from inside the building. Here's a view from that top part of that shaded plaza area looking down. You can see how much of the courtyard you're able to see. That distance between this 2.5 story mass and the edge of that space down below is really important. The proportions are really important. And so we're taking all of that into account. It's a different view looking down towards the knuckle. We've got a large seating moment here that has stairs on one side and a ramp on the other. And then you can see those stairs and the ramp coming down and around. The width of these ramps are about 6 feet right now. It's enough room for someone to comfortably sit on both sides and have a conversation and not feel like they have to move their legs out of the way to allow somebody to go through. But those views from studio are really important too, so taking into account how someone comes into studio, looks out on this space, and how it becomes part of the inside of the building as well. So we're taking all of that into account in the way that this is shaping up. And here's a view from inside the jewel looking out. It's a little bit different than what was in the original concept. It's more glazing here on the library, so that's going to be very open and visible. And then you can see this upper terrace and views out to the rest of the campus. And we all know the all-college photo that occurs in front of Seton. At some point, this may become the all-college photo for the university to take. So in 2017, this might be your commencement photo at the end of the year. And that's our goal, is to try to make this space usable for the entire college. So we're excited to be here. We've been mentioned continuing to get Mind Mixer and comments from everybody, and we want to open it up to questions. Have enough time to try to answer those. So,
Can I just say, does everybody know what the Lucy booth is? Have you guys read your email? Because nobody showed up last time. I'm just kidding. We're here to take your questions today. Tomas and Casey will take all the hard ones. I'll take the easy ones. But next time we're here, if you don't know Lisa and you don't know when the Lucy booth is happening, that's the way to stay engaged in this process. See the hottest renderings, plans off the press. Ask her, and she'll tell you what time we're going to.
You can hold on to that. I just want to make one thing clear that I didn't make clear. So moving forward, Confluence is going to continue to develop the character of the landscape. And Chris, that was spot on. It's completely connected to the building. They are one. Doug and his crew will continue to develop fabrication labs. My crew will continue to develop the character of the exterior, but I forgot to say, which is remiss of me, that BNIM will lead the kind of development of the character of the interior architecture. So every time we come, this is a team. We're working together, but the next time you see it, you're really going to know what it's like. So now to the floor. Who's got a question? Yes, ma'am. Do you want to? Is there a? There's a roving mic. There we go. Use the mic so that we can record the questions. Who's got the clicker?
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Chris, you have a clicker?
My name's Dee Dee Brokish. My question is about the west alley of Seton. I'm not seeing enough turning radius to get a vehicle into the loading dock, or it's probably just an access location for the Fab Lab. So I'm not seeing enough space to have a 180-degree turnaround.
And I think the other thing too is there are a number of options that we aren't even showing.
Right.
We've gone through a lot of iterations of this too.
So loading and unloading down into the Fab Lab is really important, and we've looked at a number of different options for that. There's a slight slope that leads down to that lower portion. We're trying to minimize the footprint and the disruption to the entire alley. There's a lot of utilities back there that we don't want to disrupt. We don't want to spend money on things underground and replacing things if we don't have to, and using that budget judiciously. So the idea is to still use this space. If it's a large truck, it could back up and unload with a forklift and bring things down. But we're also exploring collapsible bollards that could be placed here, potentially move those bollards down, or during a delivery time those bollards get moved. It allows the truck to come in and then back up and go down in here, and then come back out and reverse that leading out. So we're doing the analysis right now just to see how practical all of those are, but we'll have the right solution available.
Anybody else? Oh, you can't go twice. No, go ahead.
I'm not yet seeing any indication of strategies for wayfinding or signage, and I was wondering when that was come into the planning. Did you hear me?
I heard you. Is it okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I think with the show of hands, it was really indicative that I thought, wow, that's a wayfinding signage opportunity. Nobody knows where any of this stuff is. I think through good design and placement of things in very visible moments throughout the entire project, and the way things are being thoughtfully placed along these spines, it will really minimize the need for wayfinding because people will be exposed to it every day. So I think as a good design solution, minimizing the need for wayfinding signage is first and foremost. And then as a follow-up, determine how we need to put wayfinding signage into this entire complex and doing that. So that's there, but it's not been the forefront of the design process at this point.
Whoever gets the mic first is going to get to go.
Again, this is Dee Dee Brokish. I don't know if this is on. The image that's on the screen right now shows the east courtyard. Historically on campus, the sunken courtyards have been very difficult to maintain. I see that as being a similar situation with this particular design. Have you all looked at the idea of pulling the grade much farther south so it's more of a natural grade and maybe just a grassy slope, and not having such a complicated design?
Do you want to take it again?
We're not putting in a grassy slope along that entire stretch. I mean, the idea is to make this an active, usable space and very functional. The maintenance considerations down there, we are taking that into account. Right now, we're not exploring using turf or anything that requires mowers to get down there. The landscape that we do use is enough to make it feel very personable, very habitable, very comfortable. But you're right, it does have a lot of hard edges around there. There's a lot of hardscape. And we're trying to use materials like wood on some of the benches, landscape that's very sustainable, very easy to maintain, to make that feel much more comfortable. So we're working very hard to work that slope out and make sure that it's accessible and functional for larger events.
And if I can elaborate on that, so for me, design is about constraints and about goals. And if we did not push the land down, we would probably have to make a taller building, which would then cost more money, which would then have us turn to the faculty and to Tim and say, you have to build less program. We are not shy about pulling this off. I agree with you, you don't have good depressed landscapes on this campus, but Chris, this team can point out well-designed or really thoughtfully designing these spaces, you can have some very successful ones. I can point you to Louis Kahn or Dan Kiley. There are really some great spaces. We're working with the facilities department to talk about a maintenance program. We're debating whether or not we have a snow melt system in here. So these are things that are all developing. But the reason when Tim said he has this much firepower is, and I know it's always not good to say trust us, but I think through our collaboration and our experience that we can pull this off as a really dynamic and successful space that is really used even, towards the coldest parts of the year.
Well, just to add to that too, just from an idea of what Tomas said earlier is this idea of actually sort of challenging the campus norms a little bit and allowing the landscape aspect of not only the college but the design to really flex and be creative and not just do the things that are currently in existence on campus. The other thing, and Tim was mentioning it a little bit ago, as related to just the function of the depressed courtyard with fine-tuning drainage and things like that, being able to get the important things taken care of, all of that is definitely being thought about. So.
And Chris, you're right, we have to come up with a new name because depressed courtyard makes me think it needs antidepressants.
So I guess I think maybe I misinterpreted Dee Dee's question, but I think that she was talking about, has it been explored about making this slope get pushed farther south so that it can extend farther? I mean, that obviously would have implications in the foundation of the building.
It actually has, and the problem is we have to mediate Mechanics Hall and the knuckle that we're using to get east-west, and so by the time we've done that, and by the time you mediate those grades, I think the solution you see from Chris, we talked about it yesterday at some length, is really kind of that sweet spot that we found.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a.
Practical limitations that we can't affect those without, again, spending money on things that we may not need to spend money on. So
one thing that he didn't mention also is there's a large water catchment system right underneath this that we're trying to integrate as well that we'll be putting into place.
But again, if we had the budget, if I had my druthers, I probably would pull it further south. Chris was immediately instrumental in pulling it south. He did pull it further south. But once I recognized the constraints that to do that, we would have to build 2 less studios. Then I look for reasons to support this as a positive. And one of the reasons I think it supports as a positive is the more you pull it south to Bosco, the more you're making this a university-wide asset. And although the thesis of the building is to engage the greater university community in the importance of design, I think simultaneously this outdoor space, this progressive landscape, has to belong to you, not Bosco, not the rest of the university. And the more it goes south, the more there'll be that infiltration of those other populations. That's how I'm justifying it. I know that's a kind of trying to convince you, but it's about these constraints of delivering a total project with the maximum amount of impact for your institutional culture.
one last thing I'll mention on that is that notion of this large grade difference from upper down to lower. We've worked hard to try to minimize that. And so you can see with the slope leading up to the Jewel, that at one point I think was considered to be a level kind of arrangement. And what we've done is created this plaza space that's set down a couple feet below I-70, gently sloped down to it, that opens up the view to everything that's happening down in the Information Commons, the Center for Design Excellence down in the basement. So that relationship has really been explored at length, at how far we can bring that down without impacting utilities underground.
So the actual question I wanted to ask was related to the technology and how that starts to get integrated. Because you guys have done a pretty thorough job of talking about the studio culture and the crit space and how you guys are addressing that. But then in terms of talking about how technology instruction is going to be happening, you didn't show or talk about a classroom that's going to resolve those spaces. So what is that going to look like? How many students is that going to seat? How is that going to play into the curriculums that you guys have been reviewing those?
I think you saw a bit of a snapshot, at least with regards to classroom space that may double with the crit spaces. And I think before, what we were at was a more regularized sizing of those crit spaces that have double functions. And here in the last couple of weeks, we've really, with the shift of sort of not the sort of the double-sided bridge, I guess, if you will, into the studios and the cross-grain space, we've moved towards more of a one-sided bridge approach, which has allowed us to make some of those crit space classroom spaces be larger and more flexible over time. And from a technology standpoint, the idea is that we maintain that flexibility as well. The solution thus far is a charge to move away from, in these spaces, screens and projectors, but moving more towards a mobile cart function to where you can take those carts, put them in the crit space classrooms or into the studios as well. We know that from a design standpoint, you guys have a lot of things going on, and sometimes the carts are offering just a lot more flexibility.
I could just say, just to educate you about what it's like to make a building like this for an educational client. We're working with Sextant Group, and all of our firms have worked with them before. They're really thought leaders on the integration of technology and pedagogy. What happens, though, when you make a building and the gestation period of the building is 4 or 5 years, you answer that question as late as you possibly can because the technology is changing so rapidly. But that said, Sextant is pushing us and the steering committee towards movement away from projector screens and screens to these mobile carts, and also a super flexibility in the infrastructure to adapt and accept new modes of technology. At our next presentation, we're definitely going to be going through this, and we might even have Sextant here to explain those things.
And one thing, I know you're seeing the DD plans for the first time, but when we started this process, I believe there was 23 of those flexible, convertible crit classroom spaces. In addition to the 1,200 square foot tech-rich classroom, the plans shown today represent 31 of those flexible spaces. There's a larger variety, and so as Joe and Tomas have talked about, we'll continue to develop that envelope, but it's been a real driver in the DD scheme to add more.
But the classroom, then, are you going to have 30 computer workstations for those of us that teach the technology to students? Where there's going to be one space that has that then?
Yes, absolutely. I'm sorry we didn't point that out. Let me try to get there, Greg, while you.
So at the link knuckle, one of the strategies, go back to level 2 here, one of the strategies to activate this space is to have that tech-rich classroom at the center of the collaboration corridor, if you will. So that's the one we're charged with. One of them that's under development is, that large piece that's stacked over the jewel. We think that's a cool moment, not to make hard walls and put a bunch of computers in there, but that's a great smaller classroom space that I think will add to the auditorium and the 300-person classroom. So,
Whoever has a mic.
Hi there, Katie Kingery-Page. Hello, team. Can we go back to some images of the landscape?
Sure. Come on.
I want to follow on to some of the questions and discussion about that. Chris, I'm really thrilled at how you characterized that bottom space as the living room. And I think I see a character in what you have proposed so far. Several different zones, the upper plaza that relates to I-70, the folded social space of the amphitheater, moving down to the living room. And I just want to point out for everyone who may not understand why you've made some of these moves, everything you've done to open the sight lines into that lower space. What you've done with a small teaching space up higher, incredibly great move to do that. I have two questions. One, I'm aware that there's a real problem between creating a link to the Center for Design Excellence portion of the Fab Lab and the living room, and it has to do with an 18-inch grade difference. I'm sure there's a really good reason for that difference, and I'm going to ask you to describe to me why they can't be at the same grade for flow. And then also, if you would mention a little bit about the drainage concept, that's really critical for anyone in the room who is interested in landscape architecture.
Why don't you start? And then
Well, you could answer the reason for the grade change.
the reason for the grade change between the interior and the exterior space?
Yeah.
So
Between here and here.
between there and there. So there are within the Fab Labs there's been a desire to maintain a 10-foot clearance throughout the fabrication labs, and when we began looking very specifically at the relationship between the courtyard and the interior Fab Labs, we have explored a series of different solutions. One being to potentially elevate the Center for Design Excellence to meet the courtyard, and vice versa, the courtyard to then kind of meet the Center for Design Excellence. We decided through the steering committee to mitigate the one option to raise the Center for Design Excellence, because it takes away from the ability to move freely between that space and the other Fab Labs. But we have explored some connections between the two, and conversely, lowering the courtyard creates other challenges that I think Chris can speak to.
And before Chris, just when he's getting the microphone, you can move things from the Fab Lab through the information commons and out. I mean, there's an immediate accessibility where that grade change is mitigated through some subtle ramps.
So early in the design process, we showed that view where we dropped the elevation at the top of the living room looking down. We did that to try to mitigate the depth of the living room so that it feels a little more open and connected with I-70. And we've been looking at the basement elevation of the information commons and the library, raising or lowering as well. And you know, a function of budget, a function of connectivity, a function of trying to find the right spot so that we're not digging it down all the way down to the elevation of the Fab Labs and disconnecting it that much further from I-70. And we know that it has to be a connected space. It can't just be a green space leading down there. We've actually got to get people down there with things more than just steps. We've got to get ramps. So every time we push that lower part of the living room down 18 inches, we get another series of ramps, which again pushes everything at the top part of the living room further away from where the living room is. So, so all of that push-pull, that balancing act, are things that we've been grappling with and arguing about and coming up with options and trying to convince each other about why we're right and why you're not, and with the best ideas win. So that's where we are. We feel like this is probably the right fit for a variety of different reasons. And you know, when you start a project like this, nobody gets everything they want. It's all about choices, compromises, finding the right fit. And that's why we all test and fight for things that we really feel are important. Oh, the drainage concept too, you had a question about drainage. I'll touch on that briefly. By lowering that courtyard, the funny thing is it's lower than any of the other landscape around there. So we can't get drainage just to flow freely with gravity out of that lower part of the courtyard. So that's a challenge for us as a design team. How do we handle that. And the further down we go, the more of a problem we create. So the idea is to potentially utilize part of the old basement that's up here and use that for stormwater storage, or a tank somewhere up in this upper reach of the living room that we can direct most of the roof drainage down into there to capture it and make it available for irrigation or other purposes, and minimize how much water is going down to the lower part of that courtyard using some pervious paving and things like that that we're exploring down in the lower part of the courtyard. There's a mechanical system, a pump, that will have to take some of that stormwater and pump it up to that tank. We'll have the same condition on the north courtyard, the north side of the library. So that's how we're trying to address landscape. We're also trying to use that series of terraces adjacent to the Center for Design Excellence there, adjacent to the building, series of terraced landscapes that can also help to filter water and clean it before it gets up into that tank. So hopefully that addresses that question.
Hi. Sorry. My name is Morgan. In earlier iterations, you guys had talked about the north end of the building and the facade and kind of where English Counseling Services is, and possibly that being demolished and there's some sort of court or yard out that way. And I haven't heard anything about the north side of the building, and I think that it's a really important space, like we've talked about I-70, and I think that one of the other main thoroughfares around our building is from Hale around the north side, around the back of the engineering building, and then around the front of Fielder Hall. And a lot of people are passing that way, so I guess if you guys could say something about the...
Oh, guess what? You're absolutely right. And we haven't developed it far enough, but I can satisfy you to say that the design team believes in exactly what you just said. So the great sighting of this, even though it was dictated by constraints, is this is the major thoroughfare of the campus, and this is the major thoroughfare of the campus. You get them both. And the energy of what's going on the interior, the relationship of our new intervention in the landscape, it all has to connect with students, faculty, and staff that are buzzing there. We've done a lot of work right now, and this is an old view. When we come back next, we will have a double-story space right on the edge. You can think of it as a big oculus. And so when students are coming from, housing to the library, I think it's going to be a really hot congregating space. It's about 400 square feet in size, double height, where you will be late at night. It's not owned by anybody, meaning it's not programmed. But then also, we are going to care a lot about the character of this facade. It's not a back at all, it's a front. And we agree with you, although we can't tear it down, English and counseling has to come down. The administration believes it will come down. I can't tell you when, but certainly in about 10 or 15 years, this is going to be one of the best quadrangles on the campus. So continue to challenge us, but I'll just say to you that when we come back, I hope to satisfy you that it's going to it's going to respond seriously to the fact that this is, one of the major cross-axes of the campus.
I have a question that is not super detailed. So Tomas, it has to do a little bit with your anecdote at the beginning about Renzo Piano and the statement that something's going on in the middle of the country, and I think that's true with architectural education.
And barbecue.
And barbecue and food.
Don't forget that.
Right. So I'm curious. This is the first time I've seen the presentation, even though Doug's been working on the Fab Lab. I've intentionally stayed clear of it because I wanted to come to this presentation to see where I'm David Dowell. I'm one of Doug's partners at El Dorado and teach the Design Make Studio here. What's the assertion here with this building? And in the scheme of things, where you have, if that anecdote is true, and Renzo Piano wants to hire people from the middle, what is it about K-State that is communicated through the building that is crystal clear to the world when it's time to take the world over what's the building actually going to say in terms of what's happening at K-State that's different from University of Arkansas, from Washington University in St. Louis, from Iowa State, the other schools in the Midwest that also have solid reputations, growing reputations. They also have schools and buildings that presumably are saying something about the program. What does this building say about the program? What's the assertion?
Okay, so I have to separate that into two different tacks. We all understand that buildings speak, right? They are icons and they can be symbols of an institution's aspirations. That's not how I'm going to address your question, because that is less potent a way to deeply convey how K-State is working. The way buildings are organized, though, and the choices made about how program is disposed within a three-dimensional matrix, where you put walls, where you don't put walls, how you reveal activities within inside, I think those things are going to really proclaim what's different here. Now, I'm not going to say that's necessarily different than Arkansas or Wash U. What Renzo Piano meant, and my friend was, there's more to this quote, he was like, the recent grads I've gotten from the East and West Coast, they don't go past the computer. They are interested in a formalism, which I'm interested in too as well, and being pushed on my own formalism, he was saying, but they do not understand or care to engage intellectually past the computer to the notion of making, that there's so much more to the design process than discovering formal inventiveness using a digital environment. That, and you know he comes from this and shipbuilding, that he believes that in the center of the country there's coalescing a moment where this notion of the designer as a super process builder who is going to say that fabrication is also a design problem. You're building that here. So what the building is asserting is when you come in here, the way it's organized, finally you really see and engage the fabrication labs. Whether you're actually working in it or not, you're going to know that fabrication is going on here all the time. Assertion one. Assertion two, the future of design practice is increasingly about shared information across disciplines. Not having partitions between studios. A lot of faculty don't like that, okay? But it's asserting that we here want to graduate students who, although they're excellent in their discipline, can speak the language of the other disciplines, can understand the interaction between the other disciplines. Thirdly, I think the building will speak, and this a lot depends on the faculty, the president is making this a research institution. The Center for Excellence is meant to be, to house, not just as a lab, faculty working with other faculty saying, I got a grant for $100,000, I get this for 3 months, let's go, right? It's a research institution. But secondly, about this notion, the disposition of the studios to the faculty along the coordination corridor and making an informal space where they're supposed to engage each other is also saying that we believe that intellectual exchange outside of the classroom is as important as intellectual exchange in the classroom. I think those are the four assertions that I'm hoping the kind of layout of the building. When we get, and this is not it, when we come back to you and say, like, this is what it really looks like, I'm hoping it's a bold icon that, aspirationally fits with K-State's outlook. But, a cool building is a cool building on look. It's how it works. The assertion comes from how it works. And I hope that was a good answer. And I don't know if anybody else wants to try. Why did he get to ask a question? And why do you have to ask a hard one? Can I have a softball one? Yeah, softball. Yeah, who has a mic?
Gary's got it.
But I would ask my question first. And it has to, I know you're looking at this, and I know it's important to all of the firms involved, but your ideas about sun control on the east and west glazing visibility and this, that, and the other. Sun control on the old sawtooth because they slope to the north, but we have high sun in the summer. One way this building might speak to this question as its assertion or its identity might be to show state-of-the-art sun control that can be beautiful, contextual, etc. Where are you in that process of consideration?
We're just starting, and you're totally right. You know, if we get there, the other assertion can be that this academic culture understands a response to climate change as a moral imperative, and here it is. So we're with you. We are hamstrung by the orientation of our building. As I opened with, you know, if we were starting from scratch, we would never have oriented our building this way. But I look forward to coming back to you next time, and I really look forward to, I mean, one reason why I sought out BNIM is that I think they're the best in the industry at this, and so our collaboration is going to tackle this head on, and next time you see us in 2 months, you're going to know. But we're certainly, I certainly believe, Casey's firm culture believes, you know, you can't make an all-glass building anymore. It's morally irresponsible, and the control of sun, both passively and potentially actively, are ways that these guys are really good at doing, and we're going to come back to you with some ideas.
Just to add to that, we're in the midst of daylighting models right now, getting that started as the facade has started to get a little bit more pinned down. I mean, I think a lot of what you see is different images that aren't necessarily between the site and the building images right now. There's some missing parts about what types of glass, what types of framing systems, what types of you know, frit or internal layers to
and
glass.
One
and
quick
things
response,
like that.
I'm doing this more for students and not for you, is that you can have a building look glassy and not be transparent or translucent. So, so a lot of these images here are responding that way to have a kind of more monumental feel to the building. We know that it's about the total thermal resistance of the and performance of the envelope. So although that looks glassy, we're not proposing an all-glass building.
Well, I think if you can solve this problem on a suboptimum site orientation, that will say an awful lot to our students and to the larger world that
yeah. All right, Tim's getting antsy. You want to?
Well, I think we really do have to, Brent's been wanting to ask questions a while, he's been very polite, so we need to be sure to get his question in, and probably take one more, and then hopefully conference.
All right.
Close.
Grant, can you talk about, oh, you have.
Anybody else that wants to ask questions, bombard the team members.
I'll bombard you afterwards as well. So I'll take my priority question relating to faculty offices.
Okay.
You had said that there's something about 10 interior. I couldn't garner how many there actually were
10.
Based on that. So those interior offices, if I'm a new young faculty on the lower end of the totem pole, and I get placed in that bottom office interior side, and those are collaboration rooms with movable walls, so on and so forth. I like to have a desk that has access to light, so I might put that desk there. It's also important for eyesight that you are not always looking at the computer and looking up. And I may just see friendly faces right on the other side of my window all the time. Okay. So just out of curiosity, why are the people there?
Why are the people where?
Right on the other side of that, my daylight.
I said, no, you will not see them. I didn't say that you can't have people there.
Got it.
Okay, so what we're going to be working on is that there will be 2 modes on this glass. We're developing some options right now. One could be within the glass itself. That is a transition to essentially, you know, you wouldn't see someone below. It would then be supplemented also with a mechanical shading system that you could use. But in terms of natural light, first of all, that is an all glass wall. You know, you would have tons of views out that way. But also in this corridor, there's lots of natural light coming down. We just haven't drawn it. There would be a clear story up there as well. We really wrestled with this greatly in terms of we got to a point where we couldn't cut program anymore. Tim wouldn't let us, your department chairs wouldn't let us. And giving every faculty the glass turned out to rob us of the potential for these spaces. And from our analysis, it's these spaces that you're most missing to progressively fulfill your mission, I think, and to really make an even more vibrant and cohesive design culture. So we felt for 10, yes, probably it's going to play out this way. Younger, newer faculty, you're going to be in those spaces. 9. That's right. Tim's taking one. Tim's taking one. So.
What are the acoustic management you're doing with on those walls between those collaborative spaces and those offices themselves, both on the interior side and also the exterior side, where there's a shared wall?
Yeah, they're just a series of little tubes in between the walls. Okay. So you can just go like this to the faculty while you're on the one side. As someone who does so much university work, and as an intern architect making huge mistakes about not getting the STC ratings of partitions correct, trust me, the thing that design partners worry most about is that. If that doesn't work, you can sue me. That has to be a priority, clearly. And that comes down even to, I don't want to go back, but that glass there that we were talking about, as you know, mass is the thing that dampens acoustics the most. Even the thickness of the glass and whether it's laminated, we're going to be looking into. So we have to get faculty an escape, and the faculty have to work both in a cloister way, like I'm a monk, but then have the ability to engage people in different ways as well. So we'll be on the acoustics. One more. Get the last one.
All right. Well, I think the rhetoric is actually quite appropriate and should be continued. I have 2 questions, one more important than the other. The first question is, where is the frothy cappuccino exchange? And and secondly, I do notice that all systems and subsystems are somewhat subservient to the structural system. How does that affect the educational value of the building?
Okay. Cappuccino first. And then.
One of the things is we talk about the jewel, we talk about the information commons, we talk about that space being active, that it's not just a place that AP Design wants to hang out, but the college, the university wants to hang out. So
Go back one just to show them on the plan. So in that space down there, we're proposing in that living room, and I think we have 2 living rooms. We have the exterior living room and this living room in the jewel. And as Chris said, they are really one. We're going to have a kiosk with coffee, with food, because we do want to attract people there. We're also looking at maybe, and this goes against my design philosophy, the faculty having their own, right? I think the faculty should come and get coffee where the students are getting coffee. So we're going to take care of that. In terms of systems, we said we want a didactic building, right, that teaches, which teaches about structure, teaches about plumbing. And we're not yet there to show you yet, but we've even talked in the Fab Labs of not hiding our air handling units, but actually spending the money to have them behind glass. So that's the next level, but we definitely want professors and students to be able to, when they're really talking about making a building or a design environment, to be able to say, look, right there, that's what I'm talking about. So we're not there yet because we're just halfway through DD.
So I would add on to that, because we have had a lot of discussion about this and the notion of haves and have-nots that Tomas mentioned earlier. Because we have an existing building that's a combination of masonry, steel, and wood framing, and then we have a new building that isn't, we actually looked at a displacement air system and some more sophisticated systems, but we couldn't do that in the existing building due to floor heights and some other issues. And so trying to rationalize this, I think we really have kind of found the sweet spot in integration of mechanical systems. So while I think Tomas was kind to say we're still looking at it. We are. There's been a lot of thought given to how to integrate the systems and to make them really function to the optimal level.
I meant we're still looking at how to make the systems that we are employing reveal them so that they can be teaching tools. But no, right now, you know, we don't have active chilled beams, we don't have a displacement cooling, because we found in order to deliver the full program and make not two completely different environments, that we had to pick systems that allowed us to do that.
And interestingly, in the energy models we've run, they were also the optimal energy models.
I know.
So
yeah. All right, so we're going to wrap it up. You can Dr. DeNoble, go. Oh, so I just thank you for coming. Be proud of your college, because this is an amazing place, and you know, give us all your forbearance. The next 2 years are going to be hard, but as I said, coming back to the beginning, it's for the good of actually launching this place to occupy a huge role in the national design education landscape. So, thanks everybody.
All right.